Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about something really important in South Korea, the intense competition to get into good schools and universities. It's a big deal, and it affects many students and families. Imagine listening to something over and over again. At first, it might sound like a jumble of words, but if you keep listening, something amazing happens. Slowly, you start to hear the words separate into smaller groups, like little pieces of a puzzle. These are called meaning units. And once you can hear them, you understand the whole thing much better. So, listen carefully to what I'm about to say. It might seem like a lot at first, but if you focus and listen again, you'll start to hear those meaning units, and everything will become clearer. In South Korea, getting into a good university is seen as super important for your future. Because of this, there's a lot of pressure on students to study really hard and get good grades. Parents also want their kids to succeed, so they often push them to study even more. But this pressure can cause problems. One big problem is that many students feel really stressed out. They might worry a lot about exams, grades, and what their parents think. This stress can make them feel sad, anxious, or even sick. Another problem is that some parents spend too much money on extra classes called private education. They think these classes will help their kids get ahead, but it can be really expensive. Some families even have trouble paying for basic things because they're spending so much on private education. This competition can also affect students' relationships with their friends and family. Sometimes, students are so focused on studying that they don't have time to hang out with their friends or spend time with their families. This can make them feel lonely and disconnected. So what can we do to make things better? Well, there are lots of ideas. One idea is to make sure that all schools are really good, not just the famous ones. This way, students won't feel like they have to get into a top university to have a good future. Another idea is to change the way students are graded. Instead of just focusing on exams, we could also look at other things, like how creative they are or how well they work with others. This would give students a chance to show off their different talents. We could also encourage students to do things besides study, like play sports, join clubs, or volunteer in their communities. These activities can help them relax, make friends, and learn new skills. It's also important for parents to support their kids without putting too much pressure on them. Parents can help by listening to their kids' worries, encouraging them to do their best, and reminding them that they're loved no matter what their grades are. Now let's look at some specific problems caused by this intense competition. First, there's something called unequal education opportunities. This means that some students have more advantages than others. For example, students from rich families might be able to afford better private education, while students from poor families might not. According to research, in 2023, high school students in Seoul spend about 1.8 times more on private education than students in rural areas. Also, high-income families in Seoul spent 2.3 times more than low-income families on private education. Second, the intense competition can hurt our society. If everyone is just focused on getting good grades and getting into top universities, we might not have enough people who are creative, innovative, or good at solving problems. This can make it harder for our country to grow and succeed. Third, the cost of education can affect important things like having babies. Many people in South Korea don't want to have children because they're worried about how much it will cost to raise them and pay for their education. Also, many people move to the capital city, Seoul, to find better educational opportunities. This makes Seoul crowded and can cause problems in other parts of the country. Fourth, students' mental health can suffer. The stress of trying to get good grades can lead to anxiety, depression, and other mental health problems. Students might feel like they're not good enough or that they're failing, even if they're doing well. Fifth, it can be harder for people to move up in society. If getting into a top university depends on how rich your parents are, then it's harder for people from poor families to succeed. Research from 2010 showed that students from the richest 20% of families were 5.4 times more likely to get into top universities than students from the poorest 20% of families. So, what can we do to solve these problems? Here are some ideas. Make sure that students from all parts of the country have a fair chance to get into good universities. One way to do this is to have universities choose students based on the population of each region. Improve public schools so that they're just as good as private schools. We can do this by offering extra help, like after-school programs and tutoring, so that students don't need to rely on private education. change the way we think about education. We need to stop focusing so much on getting into top universities and start valuing different kinds of skills and talents. We can also make the education system more flexible so that students can learn at their own pace and pursue their own interests. Give more support to students from low-income families. We can do this by providing scholarships, grants, and other forms of financial aid. Make sure that all parts of the country have good schools and job opportunities. This will help to reduce the pressure on students to move to Seoul. Change the way students are evaluated. Instead of just focusing on exams, we can also look at other things, like their creativity, teamwork skills, and problem-solving abilities. Teach students how to communicate in other languages. This will help them to be more competitive in the global job market. Support universities that focus on research. This will help our country to be more innovative and competitive. It's important to remember that education is not just about getting good grades and getting into a top university. It's also about helping students to develop their full potential and become well-rounded individuals. The problems with education in South Korea are not just about the education system itself. They're also related to problems in our society, like inequality and a focus on economic success. So, we need to work together to solve these problems and create a better future for our students. Thank you for listening. I hope this has helped you understand the challenges and opportunities in South Korean education. Remember, by working together, we can make a positive difference in the lives of students and create a brighter future for our country. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this lecture. Your attention and willingness to learn are truly valued. Thank you for watching.